Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Carbon Experts Live. We're really glad to have you here. Today, I'm really excited about this episode. I am joined today by Adam Tripp of Forms+Surfaces and Nick Ghilardi of One Click LCA. And we're going to be talking about using EPDs to drive change in the sustainable materials market and how Forms+Surfaces has done that. So great conversation up ahead. We'll give a couple minutes to let some more people trickle in. But in the meantime, please go into the chat and let us know where you are joining from. We have a pretty global audience. We'd love to know what country you're in, what city you're in, so we can get a good idea of where the audience is from today. In addition to letting us know where you're from now, we will have a live Q&A at the end of today's webinar. So if you have questions now, if you come up with questions throughout the event, please put them in the chat. You can also put them in the questions tab, and we'll be collecting those throughout. And we'll go ahead and ask Adam and Nick your questions at the end. So drop them in as soon as you have them. We'll be collecting them throughout, and we'll get those answered at the end. And now today's event is hosted by One Click LCA. We are the world's leading digital platform for lifecycle assessments and environmental product declarations. Environmental product declarations, or EPDs, that's what we're going to be talking about today. In addition to providing an easy automated software that helps you create those LCAs and EPDs, we also have compliance tools for over 80 global standards. We have over 20 integrations with the software platforms that architects and engineers and specifiers use most, so Revit, Rhino, Grasshopper, and we have 250,000 LCA datasets, so we do have the world's largest LCA database. We've been powering the makers of a zero carbon future for over 20 years, and we are really happy to have you, the makers of a zero carbon future, joining with us today. And I'm just going to check out the chat here. I see we've got some people coming in with their locations. So we've got Oregon, Pennsylvania, Toronto, and Calgary. So both up in Canada. Some more from Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois. So looks like we've got people from all over the country. That's great. It's really nice to have you. Now, I'm really pleased to introduce our guest today, Adam Tripp. He is the Executive Vice President of Design and Operations at Forms+Surfaces. He leads design and development as well as marketing, engineering, and manufacturing operations at Forms+Surfaces. And he has a strong emphasis on sustainability and sustainable innovation. He ensures that each product makes a positive impact on both the industry and the environment. So welcome, Adam. Great to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
And then I'm also joined by Nick Ghilardi, who is a carbon expert with One Click LCA. He specializes in analyzing the environmental impact of products and processes. He provides eco-friendly alternative solutions and guides clients to successful verification of their EPDs. So welcome, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Aileen.
All right, so we will go ahead. Let me remove that screen. And we are going to start chatting and following our typical Carbon Experts Live format. So Adam, as our guest carbon expert, I'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got to your current role, and why sustainability matters so much to you.
Sure. So, as said, I am Executive Vice President of Design Operations at Forms+Surfaces, and my tenure with Forms+Surfaces is now going on 18 years. I started as an industrial designer, so I think that based on that background, the idea and the decision making that goes into sustainability has always had kind of an impact on my ethos. And then bringing that into our operational development and our cultural development as a company my progression through Forms and Surfaces has been within design development, and then marketing, and then finally manufacturing operations in my current position. So it's really important along the way that we've continued to embed sustainability kind of behaviorally and culturally, not only in the way that we develop products, manufacture products, also market products. I think it makes us pretty unique within the space. But it's been a long ride, and I've been able to see how ever since my first starting years, sustainability has never really been a fad for us. It's been something that's in our DNA. It's been something that has pushed certification and materials and development the whole entire time. So it's been an awesome ride here at Forms and Surfaces, and seeing where we are now in comparison to where we were 18 years ago, it's an awesome time to be able to utilize this platform, be able to broadcast and help people really understand what we bring to the table and how important sustainability is to our development.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that information. Like you say, you've had it baked into your DNA for quite a long time, but sustainability is such a market differentiator. So really excited to hear about how things have changed, like you said, and also great to see you guys promoting sustainability. So Nick, could you give us a little bit of background about yourself? How did you get into this field?
Yeah, completely. So really how I came into this field, I ended up pitching this idea of, I'll learn LCAs to my boss to really understand, what is our carbon impact of our product, and seeing, what are kind of the best areas to mitigate, because that's where they wanted to start going down this venture years ago. So that's kind of what I ended up pitching as a certain route instead of us kind of shooting fish in a barrel. I ended up learning that path, and I got into this consultancy role, which now I've been doing LCAs for over 4 years now. So while that seems short, I've pretty much worked with nearly every product that is in the construction industry, and even some outside of that. So that's kind of what has brought me here throughout that path. Even before that, school-wise, materials engineering, really, I really wanted to look at the materials, investigate that. So a lot of that kind of pushed me towards being in this role that I am in here today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, Adam, you kind of touched on it, but if you could go a little bit deeper into what role sustainability plays at Forms and Surfaces in terms of your broader strategy, how big of a part is that? And give us a little bit more detail on that.
Sure. Even since before I joined Forms and Surfaces, I think it's always been pretty evident that it's a cornerstone of our philosophy here. It guides not only how we design, but how we manufacture and then deliver products to the built environment. We say that it's really about kind of balancing the people, the planet, and obviously the long-term business success. Investing in sustainable solutions is a choice for us, but it's the right one, and it's always been about just making the right choice, not because it's a marketing option or because it's something that we've barely leveraged on a broader kind of external scale. As I said before, it's in our DNA. It's in every part of our operations. We want to make sure that our products, as they go into the built environment, they contribute positively to reduce environmental impact. The goal in the strategy is allow sustainability to drive innovation, to drive the design of the product, the development of product, and then that will kind of flow into strengthening client relationships with specifiers, with architects, interior designers, landscape architects, and then obviously positioning us where we want to be, which is leaders in the industry. But the back parts of that, I really think, just honestly come as an exercise of what has always been inherent to the way we do things. It's like we want to start at the beginning. We don't want it to be an afterthought. So I think that is in a larger sense the broader strategy. It really needs to start at the beginning of the process and the infancy of the development, and make sure that it's really considered. So woman is a thread throughout the whole entire business, really.
That's wonderful. And let me follow up a little bit about starting from the beginning. one of the things that we've seen is how difficult sustainability can be to implement if you sort of do it as an afterthought. How has that sort of weaving that really into the beginning of the process and focusing on that, how has that benefited Forms and Surfaces?
Yeah, I think it's great because it kind of positions us in a way where material use, and because we are a true manufacturer, those two things at the beginning of the process create products that continue to deliver on an expectation of Forms and Surfaces and what we deliver to the market. The material use from things that are very basic to us that people expect, high recycled content aluminum, stainless steel, very highly durable products. We preach kind of like a built to last philosophy in the way that we drive sustainability through durability, in the way that sustainable materials and obviously the embodied carbon and all the materials in use in our larger systems, our individual materials. There's a much larger program here that if you don't kind of start with that beginning philosophy of saying where do we want to end up at the end, what materials do we have at our use, what manufacturing methods, what closed loop systems can we identify so that we're making sure that there's a truly holistic approach to our design and not just saying like, oh, we want to make a new surface or we want to make a new bench. It's like it has to be about really innovating and creating something new that fits in with that larger, broader strategy that we just spoke about.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks for that. Now, you mentioned material process certification. How long have Forms and Surfaces been focused on that? How has that process evolved over the years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so since the where are we going back? I think it's probably around 2008, 2005, somewhere in there. It's like we made a pretty forward-thinking commitment that we will only use FSC certified woods in a lot of our site furniture product. And I know throughout the discussion, I think what makes Forms and Surfaces unique is we have our architectural products division, we have our outdoor products division, and it really allows us to leverage different manufacturing methods. We call it like cross-pollination, so that we can really come up with the most innovative, sustainable products possible based on this immense diversity of manufacturing capabilities. But that was kind of the earliest stage where we knew we were kind of planting a flag in the sand. We were saying like, okay, moving forward, we are only doing this. And we actually just made another announcement where we're moving forward, we're only developing dark sky lighting as it relates to our outdoor product lines. So no product we launch from now on will not have a variant that has a dark sky component to it. The EPDs, the LCAs, the HPDs, certifications like Clean Air Gold for a lot of our architectural materials within the space, and then all those separate FSC certifications. Those are all things where along the way, I feel like they credential us in the development of those life cycle analysis, the development of the data that goes into the EPDs. Like those help us identify areas of improvement. Those certifications are important for third parties to credential us within the specifier market, the architectural and A&D community. But I think it's actually more important where it allows us to learn more about our processes because we're doing such a deep dive to be able to mine that data. It allows us to make way more informed decisions and make sure we're kind of hitting that broader strategy, sustainability goals, and really evaluating our environmental impact.
That's great. On a personal note, really excited to hear about your dark sky new initiative. In a former life, I was a park ranger at a dark sky national park, so very near and dear to my heart. That's fantastic to hear. Nick, I'd like to get your take on some materials process certification, how you've seen that changing in the industry as well.
Yeah, really, I've seen it change quite a lot. Kind of to Adam's point, it's most of the time been a very cathartic process for any company that I do work with. When you go through this for the very first time, especially if you've never gone through kind of this deep audit internally about your products, the supply chain itself, where you're procuring, how far you're procuring, really mapping all of that out. Sometimes it's such a cathartic process, you really start understanding it more, and it can really, you can just start thinking about it and start optimizing it just purely based off of, now that you have all the information gathered in a certain type of document or in a certain organized way that you haven't seen before. So again, to Adam's point, starting very early on into any type of these processes is always best, because then you can be able to make the most amount of change as well, be able to make the most amount of adaptations that you need to when you're making a new product. So I think these LCAs, these certifications are great for kind of opening up. And in my experience, I worked in kind of engineering and research and development teams, really opened up their eyes to kind of the whole supply chain, looking at everything, the whole process, rather than, we're designing this thing, we just need the parts for it, let's get it. Let's actually kind of think about where we're getting them. So that is what I've seen in my experience.
Yeah, it's definitely, you need to take a holistic view on most things. We've got a very interconnected world, and especially this industry. So good to look at all that data. Adam, you mentioned the dark sky lighting components. Do you have any other material or process innovations that Forms+Surfaces is currently pursuing?
Yeah, I think it's we try to integrate a culture of more like continuous improvement. So although there's these referenceable things that we're doing now, it's more about this kind of overarching behavioral change in our culture, where we've said, like, okay, what can we continue to look at as solutions? I think that one thing we're always trying to do is figure out ways to further leverage the more renewable and recyclable materials, and also focusing on a kind of deconstruction aspect of our products, right? So it's like the sustainability through durability, but also at end of life cycle, what's going to happen to this product? A lot of our architectural systems, they can be completely broken down for secondary waste streams. For our site furniture product, it's really like you're breaking screws apart, and then it's very easily separated components for end of life cycle. I think that's the thing. It's the consideration for not only design and material innovation, but also there's a component also with this kind of like extended longer term use, and the idea of sustainability, and the idea that the best thing you can do is not throw something away, in all honesty, and use it for an entirety of its lifespan. There's also a design component to that. So we want to design for longevity so that it feels appropriate within the architectural built environment or the landscape environment, so that it doesn't feel out of place. It feels appropriate. There's a certain like timelessness to it, and designing for that longevity and utilizing durability. I feel like those are continually the things we focus on. But yeah, I think those are the things which allow us to just continually consider more creative ways to reduce our environmental impact. It's not just about like, oh, can we use 100% recycled aluminum in products and our extrusions and our site furniture? How can we utilize highly recycled content, stainless steel for a lot of our components? These are very durable materials, but it's also about that will only get you so far. You could still design something that looks inappropriate. It needs to be replaced based on trends. We try to kind of follow right in the middle there with very sophisticated and beautiful offerings that then can exist for a very long time in the built environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Continuous innovation, and also, like you say, that built to last being so important, that waste and end of life cycle often gets overlooked. Now, we've touched on EPDs. You talked about material certifications of various types, but what role do EPDs specifically play in creating transparency and facilitating your sustainable design at Forms+Surfaces? Is there anything that creating an environmental product declaration, was there any benefit to that? Anything that you learned that you that was new to you?
I think there is. I think it's as much of a kind of cathartic exercise as Nick referenced. Right? There's parts of it where, from a kind of sales and marketing aspect, it's great to be able to have that transparency. I think that's what it's all about for us, and I think for the larger movement of that being a request within the specifier market. I think it's the ability for streamlining architects, specifiers, landscape architects to be able to make a very informed decision very easily. But yeah, for us on the sales, the marketing side, it allows us to easily provide the certification, a third-party certification for and meet the expectations of the market now. On an operations side, it's really nice because it once again allows us to uncover every piece of the logistics puzzle, and to track everything down, and to do this exercise where we're confirming and figuring out things that we can build upon within our own internal processes. So I think it really boils down to the transparency across the board. I think it's a transparency internally, it's a transparency externally. I think it's a huge benefit, and I think it's something we'll continue to do and expand our product offering so that we can continually have more and more of that transparency within the market.
That's great. Nick, I'm going to have the next question to you. If you could expand a little bit on that sort of theme of transparency and how that's helpful. I know that you helped Forms+Surfaces with the creation of some of their EPDs, and then you've created EPDs for a wide variety of materials. But what have you seen that transparency really, what's the main benefit of that?
Yeah, it's kind of going back to Adam, it's connecting all the teams, really. Everyone starts getting involved. There's someone that ends up, or a team that ends up kind of connecting all these components, but at some point it all gets fed into the same place. So really, that's going to be into this LCA model. We're going to need the marketing teams to put in kind of their descriptions, because at the end of the day, it's a public document. We're also going to need our operational teams, our design teams, to input some information on the actual product itself. And then what we're able to deliver back to those teams, we're able to feed the information back to the design team, let them know, hey, this is materials that we should not procure. This is how we can iterate the design. This is how it moves our embodied carbon up or down. For our marketing teams, it actually gives us something to stand on if we are really wanting to stand on sustainability. Hey, from last year to this year, we reduced our energy by X amount of percent in our facility. We can be able to do that through these LCA models. We can show that through our EPDs over time. Hey, our iterations of this product really reduced or had really got decarbonized throughout this time. So we're able to provide information back. I think it really opens up great communication within the teams, and really, through itself, that is transparent, open communication. Everyone gets involved, whether they know it or not, and they get valuable information coming back through it all. And at the end of the day, we as a public actually kind of understand their embodied carbon, and that's beneficial for a lot of different reasons, whether your clientele or your audience is looking for lead points, or they're just wanting to have their own sustainability goals and understand how they're building things as well. So through and through, it's internally transparent and externally transparent.
Yeah, and connecting those different teams, that's something I think all companies like to do. Sometimes it's harder, but this is a great tool to bring everyone together. Adam, Nick touched on this right at the end of his answer, talking about transparency that's more public-facing, transparency to the clientele. Do you find that your specifiers are requesting EPDs for your products, or has the creation of EPDs, you talked about getting insight into your process, but are there any really concrete benefits? The reason I'm asking, A lot of times things like EPD creation or performing an LCA is seen as a cost, but there are pretty obvious benefits to it as well. And so I was wondering if you could talk about what those benefits are from a really business perspective.
Sure. I think that's always going to be part of the equation. I think that these exercises not only come at a cost, but also an internal cost when you go through this cathartic exercise, the data analyzation. I think people don't understand, business leaders need to understand the benefit of that exercise in the way that from your logistics, your procurement, general resource management, I think that there's the result every time will be an increase in operational efficiency because you have a much cleaner understanding of your processes than you did before based on the depth of the analyzation. So I think it's a benefit to obviously the people that are looking to us to have the EPD. I think to answer your first question, it's becoming very much a standard. I think it's becoming a standard by the industry leaders within the A&D space, the echelon of architects who are saying we're not interested in having your products within our material libraries unless you can, foster an EPD. Unless you've done a life cycle analysis, unless you can add all these other certifications. So I think that it's going to be a continued trend and a harder focus on embodied carbon and what it takes to actually bring these products to market, which is great. I think rising tides will float all ships here in the way that it will help bring all products to a different level. But yeah, I think what it comes down to for me, and I think the story to be told really is, it's the audit that drives the efficiency. It's the audit that drives your realization in wasted labor, material, ways that you can then identify those waste streams and say, how can we reuse these? How can we upcycle these? How can we utilize them for product development? I mean, we're literally talking about wasted materials potentially that could be upcycled into standard product or have other uses, within your larger product catalog. So I think it's just getting creative and understanding how to utilize the data to your benefit versus seeing it as a chore because people are asking for it. So if you see the other side of the operational efficiency, I think that's a really easy sell. And it's my eyes have been opened for sure after creating the CPD. And I think it's been really great operationally. It's been really great for the sales side to put us once again as leader. But I think that there's a great benefit to be seen.
Yeah, we say here quite a lot, you can't reduce what you don't measure, talking about carbon reduction, but that goes for all sorts of things, like you say, looking at your operational efficiency, wasted labor and materials, and all sorts of things that you get insight into. So, really, really important. If you're not measuring it, you don't see it. So changing tactics just a little bit, or changing tacks, what advice would you give to other manufacturers who are looking to begin their EPD or their sustainability journey? You've been doing it for a long time, so what advice do you have for those who are just starting out?
I think the what we've kind of said is it's even if you're starting small, it's starting now. You have to start. Because if you don't start, you will have regret that you didn't start a month ago. You'll regret that you didn't start 6 months ago. And it's about the certification, but it's also, once again, keep a broken record here. It's about the auditing of the process because you have now missed out on a timeline where you could have driven efficiencies, which help your overall business. It helps your business be seen as a more sustainable leader. It helps you once again, identify inefficiencies, audit your processes. I think you have to start in whatever way you can. It's a life cycle analysis. It's the full EPD. It's a HPD. It's getting the different certifications. It's bringing more transparency to your processes, I think is the goal. And it shouldn't just be seen as an external endeavor. It should very much be seen as an internal endeavor.
Yeah, you can't do something until you start. That's always the first step. And Nick, do you have any advice on, is it easy to start doing an EPD? What advice can you give people who are thinking about it but aren't quite sure yet?
Yeah, I certainly think it's easy, and that I think certainly the people that I work with can vouch for that as well. There are certainly tools, the data, the information, the training out there to be able to get up to speed. I mean, it also doesn't matter about your background too. So I mentioned that I studied materials engineering, but at least with kind of the help and training that there is today, you definitely do not need to have, any engineering background whatsoever. So I've taught people that are, even part of the HR teams, marketing teams, to be able to do these LCAs so that they can perform some of these life cycle analysis on their own. So really, I think it's very easy to start up and getting into this. The one thing I will say, it's always going to be a learning curve, and there's always going to take some time to it. But at least there is a community out there to help you, and really uplift kind of this network of creating LCAs so that there is more data. And at the end of the day, people are looking for data, so we're all kind of helping each other to be able to create that more data.
Great. Yeah, the industry is moving, and it's not as hard as it seems. So thank you for that. Adam, before we get to sort of your top takeaways and then get into our live Q&A, I'd love to hear more about, you've touched on these items, but what are the long-term sustainability goals of Forms and Surfaces? Have you guys set any goals that align with, any particular dates or any other initiatives? And also, sort of, how do you see the market evolving, and how you've been a first mover, you are definitely a leader in the space. How do you plan to continue that role?
Yeah, I think there's a wave being kind of to work backwards from there. I think there's a wave being ridden right now that is not going away. Doesn't matter with any type of larger leadership, enforcement, regulatory enforcement moving forward. I think that there's going to be a continued emphasis on low impact materials, carbon neutral products, zero carbon products, circular economic principles, in the way where it's like, how can we really think about the waste specifically and not just the product itself? But for us, it's a continued focus on how do we continually shrink our environmental footprint. And once again, it's not, I know this title might be kind of a misnomer based on what we're getting into here, but I think it's about the material, but the material is as much about the process as it is the end result. So that leads to the full analysis of the life cycle and the carbon footprint. We're presenting a material, but if you're not evolving and innovating for the process and what goes into the process, then you're not doing the whole job. So once again, thinking about the development holistically, it's continue to search out, identify, prototype, innovate using sustainable and more sustainable materials, creating more and more systems to help minimize the waste across all of our product lines. There is no larger goal set for a timeline, and once again, it comes back to I don't love the idea of working to there's your date. It's like this is a behavioral adjustment for continuous improvement for us. It's like every day has to be the date that we're looking at of how do we do better tomorrow. I'm not trying to do better by 2027, 2030, 2040. It's like every day everybody has to focus on a way that we could potentially do things better, save energy, create a more sustainable product line, and obviously make things better for the built environment. And then the transparency just comes with that. If we're doing the right thing internally, then it's something we love to highlight. We love to spend the money to highlight. And obviously architects, specifiers, landscape architects, they see the benefit in that. So as much as I'd love to be by 2050, we're going to be this company. It's like we have been that company. We'll continue to be that company. And this will just be part of our general culture that you can count on Forms and Surfaces for always to be innovating and trying to do the best as far as sustainability and making things better for lower impact existence.
Yeah, well, you said it throughout today, and it's clearly obvious that it's baked in. It's not just part of, you're like you say, you're not committing to some strategy by some year. It's baked into how you guys operate at Forms and Surfaces, which is a great way to do it. That way you're continually improving, and like you say, it's not some arbitrary goal. It's just a continuous improvement. Well, now I would love to go over the top 3 takeaways. We spoke before today's webinar, and so I'd love it if you could, I feel like you've been talking about these points, but to really drive home these top 3, and if you could talk about sort of data being so important, transparency, and then also the sort of goal setting for the long run.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I feel like we really nailed all these here. I mean, data being the driver in the life cycle analysis and what it brings to the optimization organizationally, kind of beat that one. But I think the interesting part is that as a company who might be watching this, people are in the process, it's that you'd be surprised how much and how willing people are to contribute to getting on the other side of the data, knowing that it's really going to highlight not only inefficiencies that are easily to capitalize on, honestly, but also drive a lot of that transparency that's needed. And that transparency, as we're saying, builds trust. So this is becoming a standard within the industry. The data speaks for itself. It's not something to be afraid of, the process. I think the transparency is the minimum of what people want to see. And they want to just be able to compare products. And the goal setting. So yeah, I mean, like I said, our continual goals are environmental impact, continuing to lessen that, material use, the carbon neutral and circular, more than plan the whole life cycle of a product, whether it's environment or 50 years. The goal is how can we throw less things away? How can we get more use out of the product? And how can we develop durable goods that people trust and they know can exist in the space for a very long time?
Great, thank you. Like you said, I think we hit on all those topics quite well during our conversation. So before we jump to the live Q&A, and we do have a few questions to go over, I have a question for our audience. And, you've heard a lot about how Forms and Surfaces is using EPDs and how beneficial that's been to their process. If you are interested in booking a demo with One Click LCA to see how you can use EPDs to help your business, there's going to be a poll that will appear on your screen now. Just click yes if you would like us to contact you. And if you're not ready, if you'd like to continue learning more about EPDs, just click no. You can visit our website, oneclicklca.com, to learn more. Now, we will go ahead and get into the live Q&A. So I'm going to minimize the screen again. And this first question is actually for Nick. How do you see upcoming regulations changing in the next few years? There's been a few different regulations that have come in, and this is specifically in North America, not as many as in Europe. Do you see that changing? Are there any signs that the market is going to change and those regulations will change?
Yeah, currently what I see in the regulation market for North America, I do see it increasing. What I mean by that is the regulations around the embodied carbon documentation. So EPDs, lead as well, or being able to measure your building. So that's going to affect all the manufacturers for construction, basically. So what I typically see right now is California typically sets the trend for a lot of this. So California is really leading the charge, and they had a law called Cal Green that passed in July. That's really setting this trend for builders to do their reductions. About years ago, can't put a number on it because I can't remember, but they put out buy clean, and now we're starting to see multiple states have buy clean policies. So I imagine this is going to start growing state by state, with them having more decarbonization target setting rules going on, which will ultimately trickle down and affect manufacturers needing to create EPDs so that they can provide it to their clientele. I imagine later on the federal government is going to start hopping up on this, mainly Canada, most likely at first, maybe the US as well, federal wise, but that's currently the trend regulation wise. Private sector wise, I see kind of the larger companies out there really push for the demand of these EPDs.
Yeah, that we've got market demand, and then also more and more regulations seem to be coming. So it's a good time to get in on it. And Adam, this question is a little more specific. You gave advice sort of to manufacturers just starting in their sustainability journey, but what advice would you give to a smaller manufacturer who maybe doesn't have the same resources as a larger company? What advice would you give to them to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you are looking at the data that needs to be collected to appropriately understand the life cycle of a product, the potential embodied carbon, it's a lot of the data you probably may already have access to. It's a matter of the granularity. And it's like anything else. If you can take a process and break it into smaller pieces, it becomes a lot easier to accomplish. I think that if you over time focus on the granularity of any part of the process or the supply chain, no matter how you do it, it's a pretty in-depth and a pretty large but beneficial exercise. But I cannot stress enough how beneficial it is to start piece by piece, to start in different parts of the process, and then identify not only what's needed for the analysis, but also to continually identify the benefits of the analysis. So it helps feed into the proactive thinking that will lead you through the journey of getting the full analysis of the life cycle. Yeah, I think it feeds itself. You start to see the benefit as soon as you start. So once again, it's like start small. It's a lot to get through, but as you work through the process, you start to really understand the benefit. So once again, it's all about starting in the first place.
Yeah, if you're a small manufacturer, start small, and you'll see the benefit, and quickly it will grow. Another question for you, Adam, which is about what were the biggest challenges you faced when you started looking at doing EPDs? I mean, you've been looking at your processes for a long time, but when you've got more deep into looking at the materials and everything to create your EPD, did you face any challenges, and how did you guys overcome those?
We have a very robust internal resource management, logistics, vendor team. And that was extremely beneficial when getting into this, is knowing that it's really been driven externally. These are data points that I feel like we have been measuring all along. And then, as I said, it comes down to the granularity needed for the true analysis. But the benefit of having a lot of these data points already captured, to be tracking a lot of these data points. Once again, this isn't the decision to move forward based on the kind of industry wanting more and more to have the transparency so they can make these informed decisions. That decision was definitely influenced by external want and need at a lot of these specifiers. But our ability to capitalize on that, the hurdles were less because it's part of our culture to track these things and to be looking at this continuous improvement. So it really was just about dedicating the resources. And once again, as you start the process, you understand that the resources dedication is worth it. And then you continue to do more and more of the process. So, yeah, there were hurdles and there are driving factors, but I think the third-party certification is something that's been driven externally, but internally, the analysis and processes are something that we've kind of been doing all along. So now it's just a matter of like double stamping it, third party, have something that can easily be compared and contrast to other products who have equal certification. Yeah, I think there are hurdles, but it's not insurmountable. Not sure if that answered the full question.
Worth overcoming, basically, yeah. Right? And now another question about the process. What in the data specifically stood out as needing improvement? I know you said that sort of, your eyes were opened by this process. Do you have anything specific that you can reference that you got some really good insight on?
I think that the standardization of a lot of our, because the EPD was specifically centered around our architectural glass that we're working through now. And it brought about kind of because the products are developed over a long period of time with a lot of different people involved, there wasn't a terrible amount of standardization as far as like the material use or the way that the builds were created, and to be able to look at that holistically based on the analysis and then say, hey, there can be a lot more standardization here that will actually really help material use or really help material yield from an operations perspective, from an efficiency perspective. There's a lot of those things when you look at a much larger scope of holistic data versus tracking individual products. I think you start to see kind of the trends and the analysis yields benefit as far as material use and potentially like stock sizes of material that we use that we should revise so that we can get better yield. There are things like that came out of the more targeted analysis of a single product line versus a product, and that were really actually extremely easy to integrate, but wouldn't have really been seen unless we did the analysis. So I think it's the scope, it's the larger kind of holistic look at the product line specifically for the EPD that allowed us to see things a little bit differently versus maybe how we would have looked at them prior.
Hey, Lena, I think you're on mute.
Thank you very much. I was going to say that's really interesting. It's not always the one data point or the one material you can change that makes a big difference. Sometimes that happens, but a lot of times it's those overarching themes. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for your time, for sharing all your insight. I would love now just to throw it back to you for one last sort of final takeaway. So, Nick, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, at least kind of my last thoughts, reiterating, starting early, data collection is probably the most time-consuming part of this process. Those obstacles to overcome, like learning about LCAs, EPDs, diving into all that, learning about your product. You may know that you think you know it right now, but really being able to kind of put it together in this type of fashion, gathering all that data together, kind of very, in a way, visualizing the quantification of the things that we're doing, I guess to say, is really powerful. So that provides a lot of benefits, as kind of Adam was pointing out. So I think those are my biggest takeaways from it all. And right now, we can all be seen as a market leader or pioneer by doing this, but in a few years, this will start becoming the standard that we are all going to be doing. So those are my takeaways.
Thanks, Nick. And Adam, what are your final thoughts?
I think if anything else, I mean, the purpose of, in my mind, these webinars is to help educate. The education hopefully isn't just from people joining on a specification side, interested within materials and the architectural and A&D space, but also from a larger operation space. If you're here from a competitive company or a like company within the market, it's like this is once again something that is going to be a collaborative effort, so that we can all move to a better space. So I think that start small, get started immediately. The more we can all do, I think obviously that's the goal. It's not about one company or one product. It's about the cohesive effort here, the collaborative effort to be able to benefit the built environment as a whole. So I'd suggest starting small, working together, ask questions, feel free to reach out about the process. But yeah, I think it's been very educational, and we're happy to have the transparency, and we're happy to be able to provide the data and feel very confident at this point. So once again, 100% worth the effort, and excited to move on to others.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you again, both of you, for your time today. Thank you to our audience who is joining us. I hope you found this conversation inspiring, impactful, helps give you the boost that you may need to go start looking at sustainability and EPDs. Once again, Nick, Adam, thank you so much for your time, and we will see you guys again on the next one.
Thank you so much, Aileen.